Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everyone. Today we are off to the races because this week starts with Mars squaring Pluto, which is an incredibly dynamic, very powerful, often explosive transit, in fact, but one that can create change and can push us where we need to be pushed. So a lot to explore with this one today. We're going to take a look at it, and I'm going to give you a list of 5 things to watch for given the archetypal combination. There's a lot of other stuff this week that I'm looking forward to as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about the other astrology of the week here at the outset of the video of today's content to give you a sense of where we're going as the week goes on as well. Anyway, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds to press the like button, and we really appreciate when you do that. It helps the channel grow. You can find transcripts of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. I'm really excited because I'm giving a talk. My monthly webinar coming up soon is under the events page on the Nightlight Astrology website. Click on live talks, and you can register for the talk I'm giving on June 13th, which is called The 12th House, The World That We Struggle to See. This is a talk that is ideal for people who want to understand the healing potential in this kind of unconscious territory that is the 12th house in your birth chart. We're going to be looking at the combination of your rising sign and your whole sign 12th as a way of understanding the kind of healing potential that exists in every 12th house, given the archetypal juxtaposition between the 1st and 12th signs. I think that this is also going to be valuable for people who practice. If you work with clients, this is certainly going to give you some helpful tools on that level. And again, I think it's really going to be a great talk for understanding a bit more about your own 12th house. So that's June 13th, 7 to 9 p.m. When you register, you'll get the live webinar link. If you can't attend live, we give you the recording as well afterward. So check that out. You can check out on the shop page a bunch of other really cool talks and masterclass series that I have offered in the past, and as well as other monthly webinars I've done this year. Go to the courses page. First year course is coming up, starts on June 16th. So there's still time to register if you want to join us for Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic, the first year course in Hellenistic astrology that I offer. There are payment plans if you need them. Check out the need-based tuition option at the bottom if you need a little help to make it happen. If you go up to courses and click on horary, you will also see that our horary astrology program begins on June 22nd. If you want to learn more about horary, if you don't know what it is or you're not familiar with it, after today's video, you will find an informational video that I've tagged on to the end so that you can learn more about it. This class requires that you have a little bit of a background in traditional astrology, and so you don't have to have taken my first year course to take this one, although you do need to have a background in traditional astrology, dignities, aspects, traditional house meanings, things like that. But it's a great class with, horary is a great tool to add to your kit. So I recommend checking that one out. And again, if you stick around after today's content, you can learn more about it. Okay, on that note, you can see Hilda behind me. I think you can see her. She's passed out. In case you're wondering if it looks like there is like a dead deer on my carpet. No, that's Hilda. She's sleeping. Let's look at, it's particularly morbid thought, given Mars is squaring Pluto. I guess it's appropriate. So let's look at this aspect. Here we have Monday, June 10th. You can see that Mars has entered the sign of Taurus and is moving into the square with Pluto in Aquarius. If I move this forward one day, you will see that by tomorrow, June 11th, Mars will be just passing through the square. And if we speed this up a little bit, we'll get all the way till about Saturday, June 15th, before Mars is out of the 3-degree range of the square to Pluto. So if we wanted to put a timeline on this for this week, you may have been feeling this come in over the weekend, especially since yesterday when Mars entered Taurus. That's June 9th. June 10th and 11th, certainly the most intense days. And then 12th, 13th, 14th, maybe even into the 15th a little bit. You're still getting the sort of, the sort of afterglow or the sort of slow separation of the transits. You're still feeling it as the week goes on. Anyway, some other things happening this week that I think are worth mentioning. One is that we're going to, as the week goes on, we will have a Mercury-Saturn square. And then Mercury will be at the heart of the sun on Friday. And then very shortly after that, we're going to see by next week, Venus and Mercury conjoin in early Cancer. So there's some interesting transits coming up for sure. So those are some of the things we'll be exploring as the week goes on. All right, let's go ahead and get into our list of things to watch for. So within this list, I think the most important thing to understand is that we are dealing with the fundamental archetypal combination of Mars and Pluto. But we're also dealing specifically with Mars in a Venus ruled sign in Taurus. And that matters because the difficulty that Mars has in Taurus comes down to the tension between Venus and Mars. When Mars is in the sign of Taurus, it is in one of Venus's two domiciles, and when Mars is placed in either Libra or Taurus, it struggles. The reason that it struggles is because you have Mars, who is assertive and aggressive and competitive, often surrounded by conflict and requires perseverance and sacrifice. Those are Mars themes that are not exactly in line with the values of a sign like Taurus, a Venus ruled sign that privileges peace, ease, flow, sensual gratification, stability, harmony, and a kind of earthy, sensual, luxurious quality. So it's not that there aren't any beautiful or interesting significations for Mars and Taurus. It's just that there is a natural kind of tension that's built into Mars's placement in this sign. So once we understand that, and there's a phrase that I'm using down this list, which is the bull in the china shop. I've heard astrologers use this for as long as I've been doing astrology with Mars and Taurus. And it's true. There's something about Mars that is more just kind of blunt and rude and sort of, it doesn't always make for an easy experience when Mars is in Taurus. So we have to keep that in mind. And then of course, Mars is in a square. Squares are of the nature of Mars. So we add a little bit more Marsiness to the situation. And then it's squaring Pluto in Aquarius. So we're going to look at this list of 5 things to watch for is generally speaking applicable for all Mars-Pluto interactions, especially the squares, oppositions, and conjunctions. But this list is also there are some specifics here that have to do with the placement of Mars in Taurus and Pluto in Aquarius. So let's go ahead and move down the list. Number 1 is moving heaven and earth. When Pluto in Aquarius meets up with Mars, one of the things that happens, during any Pluto-Mars dynamic is the kind of explosion of willpower and action. When Mars hits Pluto, the power of the will and the drive, the drive or urge to act and do and accomplish and assert becomes really terrific. I mean, you're talking about it's like a very particular and strong kind of fuel for Mars. If Mars wants to accomplish something, Pluto gives it this kind of primordial power and force to go and get it done. However, if there's a conflict, it also feels sort of primordial and very charged and very intense. If there is purgation, explosion, destruction, conflict, hostility, it all can take on a quality of such tremendous depth and power because Mars is being so intensified by Pluto. And that's true for all Mars-Pluto dynamics. I use the phrase moving heaven and earth because Mars in Taurus at its best wants to move Earth for the sake of something Venusian. Peace, beauty, enjoyment, luxury, wealth, a sense of security and comfort. And Mars is kind of funny because, again, this goes back to the tension of Mars in a Venus ruled sign. Mars will sort of act and compete and will its way to the creation of those Venusian values. It's like a bulldozer that's going to come in and move the earth in order to create the space to build the garden. As someone you guys know, over the past couple of years, you supported us building a community herbal medicine garden. We've been hosting free events. And I remember when, the little bobcats came in to like clear the space and then they built the garden in it. That's it. That's Mars and Taurus. Mars and Taurus at its best is like, I will use energy and will and force and power to move Earth around for the sake of achieving something that is ultimately Venusian, but I'll sort of work on behalf of that kind of thing. My grandfather had Mars in Taurus and Jupiter in Taurus as well. And he had some position of rank in the military. I forget exactly what his rank was or whatever, but When he came back from the military, like most of his career was spent in land development, and he had his own land, about 100 acres, and he kept an apple orchard and a Christmas tree farm, and he kept bees, and he was able to find artesian wells and tap them and build ponds. Like, he was just such a mover of earth. And you could tell everything he wanted to create was sort of beautiful and Taurian, but like that man was basically a tractor. You know, he was basically just like a little tractor chugging around. And so it was funny because to me, he was never a person that felt peaceful. It never felt as luxurious as the land that he developed felt. You know, it was a place that I went as a kid, his land and his Christmas tree farm and his pumpkin patch and like all this stuff. And like, I never felt like he resembled the piece that the land did, even though he built all of that, you know? So it's very Mars and Taurus. But where does the vision come from? Mars and Taurus might be the tractor or the bulldozer, and it might be the literal moving of rocks and earth and the shifting of forms in time and space to match a vision of beauty. But it gets the layout, it gets the vision from Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is Olympian. It has the sense of the blueprints laid out on the table of the gods somewhere high and far away, in a place where the ideal triangles were first forged in the mind of God, right? That's Pluto in Aquarius. And there's some crazy stuff up there too. You know, there's all the ancient alien shows exist, you know, in that territory. So Mayan calendars, the I Ching, astrology, it's all these massive paradigms of time and space, musical theory, you know, that realm of abstract systems of wisdom and understanding, physics, you know, this is in a sense Aquarian. So when Mars and Taurus gets in touch with Pluto and Aquarius, the idea is that we're trying to take some kind of heavenly vision, a sort of paradigmatic ideal or idea, especially one that we consider to be progressive or lofty or, you know, again, sort of like Olympian. This takes us to a better place than we are currently. This is the next thing. And it comes down and the plans are delivered to the guy in the bulldozer, Mars and Taurus, who says, okay, let's move some stuff around. So that's one way of looking at this Mars-Pluto dynamic. Number two is the bull in the China shop. And this is where the China shop is, when I think of a place that sells, and by the way, is it offensive to say China shop anymore? I just thought of that. I guess my understanding is that the reason that people say they have fine china as a phrase is because the first, is it porcelain? A lot of it came from China. Is that? I don't know. But anyway, if that's an offensive thing, forgive me. I don't know if that's said anymore. Anyway, that fine fine dinnerware that you have or whatever. If you think of a shop that has nothing but like fine ceramics or whatever it is that's been, you know, artistically forged. You think about someone who is in that setting, like my kids who don't have the wherewithal, the bodily control to navigate that without potentially knocking things over, breaking things. That's definitely something to be concerned about with Mars and Taurus squaring Pluto and Aquarius. You have the world's most progressive ideas and plans and visions, but then again, like you have something as crude as a bulldozer, and maybe you're gonna the potential to be like sort of too strong and blunt and dull and heavy-handed with something that requires a more sensitive, subtle, you know, manipulation from ideal into form. It's like, think about the process involved in you know, a potter creating a beautiful vase and then firing it and painting it and all this stuff. Think about the level of care and meticulous attention to detail. Take that from an ideal into a form. So is Mars best suited to enact something on behalf of Pluto and Aquarius? It remains to be seen. Mars could be a little heavy-handed, a little destructive. it's kind of like, do we have the wrong tools for the job, if that makes sense? So you could look at it moving heaven and earth, but also you can look at it as like the there may be tools needed that are more sensitive than a bulldozer, you know. Number 3, beautiful but domineering. So anytime Mars gets into Taurus, again, one of the things that comes to my mind is like Mars will be compelled to act on behalf of things that are very Taurian, which again, luxury, peace, beauty, stability, harmony, flow, sensual gratification, wealth, a kind of a feeling of pleasure. But Mars can act in the name of those things or with the desire for those things in a way that is very aggressive, too assertive, heavy-handed, domineering, oppressive. I mean, I will never, again, I think of my grandpa because he was just such a caricature of Mars and Taurus for me as a kid. And like, I just remember that he meant well. And so many of the things that I know he valued were really beautiful. A lot of them were very nature based. But he just couldn't help but be, and he had Mars and Jupiter in Taurus. He just couldn't help but be sort of like a, I don't know if a bully is the right word. He just couldn't help but like fill the whole space and kind of crowd out other things and people. And I think that that's a bit like Mars and Taurus. Maybe it's Jupiter too, right? But Mars in Taurus has the most the most beautiful aspirations and will act on behalf of them. And, you know, shovel needs to hit earth. But at the same time, you can imagine if someone is, you know, you're trying to eat dinner with someone and they're using a shovel, you know? So beautiful, but possibly domineering. A moment of reluctant change or transformation. This one is interesting because Mars Pluto can be very explosive and very transformational. If you need to do something and there needs to be momentum and a sort of charged up can do energy that says, let's go do this, you know, I'm going to act and get something done. Well, Taurus is a sign that loves habits that are related to ease, pleasure, enjoyment, beauty, and stability. I mean, your morning cup of coffee is very Taurian. Your routines that sustain and support a healthy biorhythm and like that, you know? Oh my God. The Mars Pluto dynamic can be so effective because here's the thing is that Taurus doesn't love to change. It's one of the signs that loves staying the same the most. This is why it's so interesting to have Uranus in Taurus for so long, especially me as a Taurus rising. My God. Mars hitting Pluto in Aquarius will say, here's a different idea. Here's a different vision of your life. And you're going to have to break some habits. You're going to have to change fundamental aspects of your physical, earthly reality. So the amazing power to change habits or patterns that are very biologically rooted. Oh, I'm going to work out. I'm going to change my diet. I'm going to change my sleep pattern. I'm going to change my whatever. The power to make changes, an idea that appears, hey, this is a higher vision of what my life can be, very Pluto and Aquarius, an ideal image from the realm of the gods. This is an idea that came, that I you know, it beamed itself into my head straight from Olympus. And now I have this power, even though it's uncomfortable to make a change to patterns and habits that are so ingrained and entrenched, I am going to make that change. Now, it could be that there's a kind of reluctance to change or an unwillingness or a stubbornness to change that's also getting addressed somehow. That could be in you. It could be in people around you, situations around you. And then finally, this is probably the one I like the least. Mars Pluto can be incredibly, like, I want to say Machiavellian in the sense that it's like, I don't care, would the ends justify the means, I'll do whatever. So power hunger, oppressive, bullying, domineering attitudes, get it done, get what I want, no matter what the cost, no matter who I have to bulldoze. And I can justify it because I can cloak the vision or the value in something that sounds or looks beautiful. So Mars in Taurus, a Venus ruled sign. I am going to do something with a sort of ruthless, power-seeking, drive, and I'm gonna try to get away with it because I can sort of cloak my fanaticism or my fundamentalism in some vision or value that is beautiful or luxurious or something like that. We can delude ourselves by thinking that the end is so beautiful and will be so healthy and happy that whatever I have to do to get there does not matter. That doesn't mean that there aren't sacrifices that have to be made for beautiful things. It's another Mars-Pluto dynamic with respect to these two signs, Taurus and Aquarius. Like sometimes beautiful things require that you have to burn a little to get what you desire. Like if you, I don't know, like I have tons of clients over the years who come in and, maybe they go through a Mars first house transit or Mars retrograde in the first house, and they literally have to burn off fat. They lose 10 pounds, they lose 20 pounds. I had a client one time who lost like 150 pounds, seriously obese. And it all started with a Mars retrograde in the first house. So, Mars Pluto, yes, you may have to sacrifice tremendously for some vision of value, some vision or value of beauty. And it requires that you burn, that you purge, that you transform with effort and sweat. At the same time, be careful that you're not going so far that you're willing to justify cruel or ruthless or dark, shadowy stuff. You're not tapping into that to get what you want, and compromising yourself karmically in the long run. All right, those are my 5 things to watch for. I hope that they help you to make the most out of this energy this week and notice it around you. That's it. If you stick around after I sign off, you can learn more about the horary program, which begins later this month. Year 1 starts later this month. Need-based tuition available for everything. Also, don't forget the 12th house webinar that's coming up. You can check that out, all of that, on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Any questions you have, email us, info@nightlightastrology.com. That's it for today. We'll see you again soon. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm going to tell you guys more about the upcoming horary astrology program, which begins later in June. And I hope that if you have never learned anything about horary, that you will, at least in listening to this, be exposed to horary astrology, have a little bit of an understanding of what it is. And if not now, then maybe sometime in the future, you can take time to study it. It is one of the forms of astrology that dates back to the earliest eras of astrology, the Hellenistic era, the medieval era, the early Indian period of astrology. And it is a branch of astrology that is concerned with specific predictive questions. So, for example, a horary question is usually formed in terms of a yes or no answer, and it is cast from the location of the astrologer at the time that the astrologer receives the question. So a typical horary question might be, will I get the job? Or will we get married? Or my cat went missing, will she come back? There are applications of horary astrology that involve the location of missing items, like where is my missing pen? Or where is, I actually helped a farmer one time locate a missing bull that had gotten out of the pasture. So it's a really, really fascinating form of astrology. It's very old, and it is like the birth chart of a question, a predictive question. So again, if I receive a question from someone and it's like, will I get the job? Then I cast that chart at the time I get the question. I usually use the receipt of the email time. And then I cast a chart for that question. And there are a series of traditional techniques that have been around for a very long time, thousands of years, that are used to determine the answer to that question. So with that in mind, let me show you a chart and you can learn, see what it's like in real time. So this chart is, the question that was asked is, will my spouse keep his job? This is a woman who had some very good reason to worry that her spouse might be getting laid off. And so she wanted to know, so she could prepare herself, is he in fact going to be laid off from his job? And so when I receive that question, that's a horary question. When I receive it, at 9:03 a.m. on April 10th of 2023, a little over a year ago, here in Minnetonka, Minnesota, where I live, I cast a chart that becomes the birth chart of that question. I then use a series of techniques, and that's what you're going to learn in the horary program, are those techniques that go into answering all different kinds of questions. questions about jobs, questions about money, questions about health, questions about marriage or relationships, questions about babies, questions about in pregnancy. I mean, you name it. And even missing pets and people and missing items. You see a lot of different approaches in horary. And so over the course of a year, we study those approaches to different kinds of questions, and we practice and practice with different charts of different questions, learning the techniques so that we can have this predictive tool in our kit as an astrologer. So anyway, here's a question: will spouse keep his job? In horary, what happens is you are always looking at the planets that represent the people and aspects of the question. The person asking the question is called the querent. The querent is always given the ruler of the ascendant and usually the moon as a co-signifier of the querent. So in this case, Gemini is rising. So we're going to give Mercury to the querent and the moon. Well, we can see the moon is sitting right on the cusp of the 7th house of marriage, which shows us that the querent, the person asking the question, is indeed really concerned about their spouse. The placement of the moon gives that away because it's sitting on the cusp of the 7th, which is going to be the house of the partner. So you see little things like that. They're a little wink that you have you have a radical chart, so to speak. Now, the 7th house ruler is going to be the spouse. That's Jupiter, since Sagittarius sits on the 7th house cusp. In horary, we use quadrant-based houses because the theory was all developed through quadrant-based house systems, which is interesting. So this is the only place in my practice that I teach from and use a quadrant-based house system, not whole sign. Anyway, it's really fascinating to look at this chart because Jupiter is going to represent the spouse. So we can see Jupiter over here, about to be conjoined by the sun. Then we look at the spouse's job. And the spouse's job is going to be the 10th house from the spouse. The 10th house from the 7th is going to be the ruler of the 4th. That's called derived houses. This is something that appears in horary quite a bit. So if we take the spouse as house 1 and we count 1 through 10 from house 7, we get to the cusp of house 4 for the 10th from the 7th, or the spouse's job. That is the sun. So here we see that the sun, exalted sun in Aries, is about to conjoin Jupiter. This means that Jupiter is combust. And when Jupiter is combust like that so badly and the sun is about to conjoin it, that is a moment of death for Jupiter. So the job, we know that combustion from a planet like that is often implied in the charts of death, or that's a condition of debility for Jupiter at the hands of the exalted sun. And Jupiter is, of course, sitting on the 12th house cusp, which is the derived 6th from the 7th house of the spouse, a place that was associated with misfortune. So we can see that this is a very clear indication that that Jupiter is being debilitated by, burnt up by the job. And that moment that's coming of the conjunction could be positively looked at as maybe a death and rebirth of your career. But the first thing that's happening is the death. When it is a possibility built into the question that he could be one of the people that's about to be laid off at his company, and you have this kind of symbolism, this is very clearly a yes, your husband is about to be laid off because of that combustion and the upcoming combustion and conjunction from the sun. Now you might say, what about Cazimi? Doesn't the Cazimi mean like a rebirth? Yeah, but not first, right? The first thing that happens is that Jupiter is being burnt up by the sun. When the sun is the job and Jupiter is the spouse, and there is a possibility that this kind of event happens, then yes, that is exactly what happens. We can also see, if we take out the outer planets, which is something we toggle back and forth in our horary class, we take out the outer planets and we can also see that the very next thing that is going to happen is the moon, as an indicator of the flow of events, is about to trine the sun and then immediately hit Jupiter, which means that the moon is also translating the light from the sun to Jupiter. And when the sun is acting here as a malefic, burning Jupiter up, this is another sign that the flow of events is going to lead that malefic sun to eliminate Jupiter. The malefic sun only in this context because Jupiter is combust. So anyway, these are little rules of horary, and there's a ton of them, right? For every different kind of question, there are different ways of assigning planets to the parts of a question, and there are different techniques that we use to answer the question. In that case, the judgment of the chart was, it does look as though your husband is going to be laid off, and indeed, that was the outcome. Her husband was laid off within a week. So the way that I framed it in the answer was very uplifting, because I said, this is when we see this kind of event, a Jupiter Sun cazimi, which we've had in the sky recently just now too, as I'm making this, that can be a sign of rebirth. So even if there's a death and a loss here of job, the opportunity for this to be a career reset is also implied by the transition of this Jupiter Sun conjunction. And she did write to me later in the summer last year to tell me that he found a new job. So, and it was indeed like a positive reset. So half of the art of horary is delivering the news. How do you deliver a predictive result without increasing someone's anxiety, in a way that's constructive? How do we take what we see and translate it for someone when the question is predictive? And there's often a lot of, people have a lot of emotion invested in the outcome. So this is a beautiful form of astrology. If you are interested in studying it, here is how to register. You go over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com, and you are going to go to the courses page. And when you're on the courses page, you're going to click on the horary course. You need to have a background in understanding dignities, aspects, and house meanings. And then it starts on June 22nd. At the bottom, you will find that there is need-based tuition assistance. And there are also payment plans that you can utilize, and a one-time payment saves a little bit of money. So, but if you need tuition assistance because it would be impossible for you to take the program otherwise, please be sure to check that out and come study horary. It's an amazing, amazing form of astrology. If I could do nothing but practice horary, I would, because it is so interesting to see the unique picture of each situation come to life in the context of a horary reading. There's no birth chart needed for it either. It's amazing that astrology can work that way. We always think, oh, it has to work off from a birth chart. No. We can use astrology just like we use tarot cards. Cast them out at the moment a unique question comes up. Cast a chart at the moment of a question, and you have a series of techniques and approaches that can help you answer it. So that's horary in a nutshell. I hope to see you guys there, and thanks for listening.